What's up in War Eagle War Report family? You got Ike Jones back with another morning drop, and today we're talking about pass rush. How can Auburn generate a better pass rush coming up this season? Let's talk about it. Y'all know how we do right here, War Report style. Let's drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Report. Drop.
Morning drop. It is Wednesday, March the 13th, and we are in here once again talking a little Auburn football. Spring practice is back up, geared up on the plains, and today we want to talk about the pass rush for Auburn, and it's been kind of non-existent, if we could be honest, for a few years here at Auburn, and it's something that I think a new defensive coordinator, DJ Durkin, is going to have to figure out how to improve. Josh Aldridge, in his second year on the Plains, now primarily responsible for your edge rushers in this new defense, is going to have to figure out how to generate a pass rush from that unit. So we're going to focus on the edge rushers today. Before I get too far into the conversation, please do me the necessary by sharing the content out there on social media. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And, as always, just go ahead and spread the good word of the War Report in whatever way that you want to, man. Like, even if you don't share, like, if you're just talking to people, like, man, did you listen to the War Report? They was talking that good. Yeah, anyway, let's get into the conversation, man. Today, again, we're talking about what is now the buck position for Auburn. Last year, that outside edge rusher, or that primary edge rusher, was called the jack position in Ron Roberts' defense. This year, it will be called the buck. And we're kind of thin in that room. We're thin last season for Auburn in that room. Going to be thin again right now. It's going to be interesting to kind of see how that mixes and matches coming up into the year. But let's first talk about the people who are no longer in the room. If we're being honest, the contributors from this room that have departed for Auburn, good locker room guys, but guys that didn't. I think Elijah McAllister was the standout of this group, but let's just kind of go down the list. Hayden Bryce, senior, didn't play very much, graduated, he's moved on. Steven Sings came in, heard a lot about him in the preseason. He was the guy that transferred over to from Liberty to Auburn following Coach Hugh Freeze and staff over. But when it got into the season, you didn't really see or hear from him very much. So I was a little disappointed, underwhelmed based upon what I had heard in the preseason about his ability to be disruptive and go out there and give you some quality reps. He didn't play very much. You see 75 snaps on the season. He ended up getting back into the transfer portal. Best of luck to him in his journey, but no longer with Auburn this year. But the guy who really played significant snaps and I think was a very key contributor in a lot of ways for this team was Elijah McAllister, the transfer over from Vanderbilt last season. 357 snaps last year. And despite not being a prolific pass rusher, I think that he was a guy who just kind of was where he was supposed to be the vast majority of the time, did a good job in run defense. Again, not stellar. He wasn't this overwhelming threat out there, but I liked what he brought as far as his tenacity and his ability to just kind of know where he needed to be. And he was a great locker room leader for Auburn last season. So I think the vocal nature in which he led in that group is going to be the thing that's going to be missed the most. The maturity that he brought to the defense is going to be missed. And he played a significant amount of snaps, so that can't be overlooked as if it was nothing. Now, when we get into the returners for this season, one of the main guys that returned was hurt earlier in the season, which gave room for Elijah McAllister to get some of these reps early in the year. But overall, I don't think Auburn is missing a lot from that room as far as depth is concerned. Now, there's some other guys who you could have seen slide over into that spot that are no longer with the team when you think about guys like Wilkie Denaud that could have possibly been in that room. Right, he could have gone over and been in that outside backer / edge / buck, whatever you want to call it, position potentially, but likely would have slotted as a defensive end. And so we've covered that in the defensive line room. And a guy who's not listed currently as a buck, but could potentially play some of that role for Auburn, Amaris Williams, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute with our returners and our additions. But overall, not a lot that I feel like is lacking as far as productivity from this room. So when we go and we look at the folks who are returning from the room, you see really it's one guy, right? Brenton Williams, the freshman, didn't play very much, so don't really know what to expect from him. But a guy that I expect to at least compete for some additional snaps this offseason. He's going to need to show and prove in this offseason. But the absolute guy for this room is Jalen McLeod. 524 total snaps last season. You see his PFF rankings. I mean, he was an absolute monster when he was healthy last season. So if he can remain healthy this offseason and going into the season, I think he's going to be the main guy. Actually, I know he's going to be the main guy for this room. Jar Martin Richter, redshirt freshman, walk-on guy, didn't play at all last season. I don't expect him to factor in even with a limited amount of people on this room. I mean, you see there's only 3 guys that are returning for this room, and you only have the addition of one more, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But Jalen's the guy, and he's the guy that Josh Aldridge is going to have to figure out how to get him out there, and how do we generate one-on-ones? Or if people are going to be double teaming him, how does that free up scheme-wise other people to be able to do some things? So, what they're going to do with Jalen McLeod to try to get him one-on-ones or use him as a decoy so that they can bring pressure in other areas. I don't have it listed here in his coverage rate, but he actually graded out pretty well from PFF as far as coverage is concerned, as in addition to what we have here from his total defense, tackling, rush defense, all being up above 78%. And then you have, his rush defense, 68.3, which is still pretty good. So he was a solid contributor, and he is the main guy for this room for sure going into next season from that buck position. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how he's deployed in this defense and how quickly they can bring along some of the new guys that are going to fill in here, and whether or not Auburn decides to go to the transfer portal to get additional depth. This is a place where I would expect that the transfer portal may be something they'll try to go look at for subset guys who are just really edge rusher specialists, right? Like maybe sub package folks that you're just going to bring in on 3rd and long to just go out there and get after the passer. So I do expect them to try to do a little bit of work there. Before we get over into our other portion of this with the additions and with who has the most to prove, definitely want to get a quick word from our sponsor today. That's going to be Manscaped today. We're talking about buck position, and I'm not going to make the lewd joke that's obvious right there, but just use your imagination. Anyway, the Manscaped is the sponsor for today, so make sure you head over to manscaped.com and use code RAPPORT when you do. 'Tis the season to take care of your guy. If you are a woman out there and you want to go shop for your guy, Manscaped's a good place to go get some gifts for him. Make sure that his male grooming needs are taken care of. A variety of different things there, from, trimmers and shavers to lotions and deodorants that are especially for the male body. So make sure you hit them up, manscaped.com. I have enjoyed utilizing my Manscaped products, and I'm sure that the man in your life, or if you're a man and you want to shop for yourself, I don't want to make this into a thing where your woman got to get you your stuff. If you're a man, shop for yourself. Get your own stuff, man. Take care of your own grooming needs, but you can do that right there at Manscaped. And we definitely appreciate them for sponsoring this segment of the War Report. Now, let's get back over into your morning drop and talk a little bit about the addition to the room. I shouldn't even say additions plural, addition singular, and that is the true freshman Jamonte Waller. He is a guy who is going to come in, and frankly, because of the lack of depth in this room and the lack of experience, going to be factoring in immediately in the 2-deep race, right? So Brenton Williams is the other guy that's going to challenge there, but listen, he's a redshirt freshman, didn't play a lot last year, which means he doesn't have a lot of room as far as, experience above Jamonte Waller. And from a physical makeup standpoint, I don't think that he is going to be, bigger, faster, stronger than Waller is going to be. So it's going to be incumbent on him to go out there and take the job. But Waller's going to be a guy that's going to factor in heavily into this race as far as pass rushers are concerned. When you take a look at it from a physical standpoint, Brenton Williams a little bit taller, 6'3", 245. Waller 6', 247. So he's bigger already, just a few inches shorter. So he's more. And then his speed, that's been something that people have talked about a lot already. And that's one of the main reasons why he even came to Auburn, because he wanted to be able to get and learn from Jalen McLeod. Jalen McLeod, significantly smaller as far as his physical frame, but definitely utilizes his speed in a very significant way to go out there and impact the game. I expect Waller to factor into this race immediately. I don't think that he's going to be a guy that's going to get redshirted. He's going to be out there and he's going to be ready to play day one, or he's going to be asked to play day one. Whether he's ready for it or not, that's yet to be determined. But he's going to be asked to do it from day one because, again, there's just not a lot of guys in there to rotate through. And this is going to be a defense that I think is going to major on trying to play and get a lot of havoc going there. When you look at the numbers from last season, and I did take a minute to pull these, sacks per game last year, Auburn had 2.3 sacks per game. That was good for 44th in the country, which, top 50 in sacks per game, that's not terrible. Auburn actually had a good defense last year. I think the struggles in the pass game as far as being able to stop third and long and all that cloud some of the judgment of people about how good this Auburn defense was last year. But a top 50 defense in sacks per game, not bad. As far as sack percentage, Auburn was up in the top 25 at 7.89% sacks. So on pass attempts, they were able to get a 7.89%. Again, that's good for 24th in the country, which isn't bad. Now, if we look at Texas A&M, they were the second best in the country at 11.02% in sack percentage. So significant upgrade there if you can get into those kind of numbers. Similarly, in sacks per game, Texas A&M 3.4 sacks per game. That was good for fourth in the country. And when you hear Coach Freeze talk about, man, I'd like to have those numbers he had from Texas A&M, that's the kind of stuff that he's talking about. He wants to be able to be a top 20 defense in most statistical categories, which you look at Texas A&M's defense from last year, and a lot of them, they were top 20. Now, there were some others that they performed poorly in, but as far as ability to stop the run and getting to the passer, that Texas A&M defense was ferocious up front. That front seven is really what has been the calling card for DJ Durkin in all of his stops, and it's something that I'm looking forward to seeing how he and those defensive coaches are going to figure out what to do with this Auburn room of pass rushers, defensive linemen, and edge rushers here. Now, when you talk about who's responsible for this, again, Josh Aldridge is going to be the edge coach. He was solely in charge of all linebackers last year, but you're going to have Durkin, who's going to be coming and playing a huge role in what the linebackers are going to be doing himself as far as the position group is concerned. And we'll talk more about the linebacker room because that's going to be an interesting room as well here in a bit. But edge rushers, again, it's really only two names, in my opinion, that you really want to look at. Brenton Williams, I don't want to discount him just because I haven't heard about him a lot. Doesn't mean that he's not talented. He got in last year. Hopefully with this an additional year under his belt and his ability to come in and have the full spring, he'll be able to get into a three-man rotation there at that buck position. Now, as far as who has the most to prove, I think it's going to be Brenton Williams, right? Like, he's the guy that really is the unknown quantity in here, and is he going to be able to come in and not be the overlooked man because his name doesn't get you the same recognition when people say it, right? Physical frame, he's there already. He came in and, he was a scholarship guy last year. Is he going to be able to come in and compete for the position here this season? And in a room that doesn't have a lot of folks, right? So listen, Josh Aldridge has right now very few guys in his room that he has to look at. Now, I did say I was going to come back to Williams, who I think might be able to play in this role as well because he wasn't more of an edge rush guy in high school. So is he going to slide over now? He's not slotted as that right now when you look at, which room he's in on the website. But I do wonder whether or not they're going to eventually move him over into that position and let him be more of a pass rush specialist with Josh Aldridge, really figuring out how to get after the passer. With the buck position, it is similar to that jack position where they want you to be a little bit more versatile. So you're going to have to be more than just a pass rusher. You need to be able to set the edge well against the run and be asked to drop back into the passing lane every now and then. So you're going to be zone blitzes and that sort of thing. So you need to be a little versatile. And so the question is going to be how well some of these younger guys, Jamonte Waller, Williams, are going to be able to do that sort of thing. But Brenton Williams is the guy I think that has the absolute most to prove in this room because he is, again, going to be the forgotten man by most fans when you start talking about this. So hopefully he goes out here this spring and he proves, because the room is so thin, You don't really want to have any attrition in the room, number one. And number two, you want to have guys that can be high yield guys that if you need to have them step in because of whatever reason, they can do that and they can do it effectively. So looking forward to see the progress of that young man and how Auburn is able to get a little bit better at the pass rush this coming season and limit some of the opportunities of defenses. We talked about third down defenses before, and just I pulled the numbers on this third down percent. Last year, Auburn actually outperformed Texas A&M 32.69%, 31.33% for Auburn on third down versus the 32.69% for Texas A&M. So slightly better on third down. The problem is that when you get to fourth down, Auburn was giving up 56% of fourth downs. Texas A&M only 41.18. Now, the bigger number that I want to call out here in terms of this, and this is why rushing the passer is going to be so important when you get into those third and long scenarios, is the number of attempts that teams had at fourth down versus Auburn. Now, fourth down situations, it's one of two things, right? It is down in distance and field position, or it is time of game and we just got to go get it, right? Auburn had a team's attempt 86 fourth downs last year and was able to convert 27 of those fourth downs. Again, that's for 56% of the fourth downs attempted, teams were able to convert, as opposed to Texas A&M, who only had 17 attempts last year, which means they were in situations where teams weren't in a good down and distance to go for it on fourth down very often, right? So they had slightly underperforming, I guess, if you look at it by numbers in third down conversions, which is still really good at 32.69%, but they had better fourth down stops and less attempts as a team were attempted against and the opponents attempted less. So I think that Texas A&M did a better job of getting teams off the field than Auburn did holistically last season. And a large portion of that, I think, is going to be about the pass rush. And we can look at tackles for loss as another statistic. I didn't pull those numbers specifically. But again, Auburn's got some work that they need to do. And these four young men that are in this room are going to be largely responsible for being able to generate that pass rush and going to be looked at as the guys that need to be able to do it. But anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on how Auburn can improve this season, particularly in the pass rush game, and what things do you think need to happen in this spring/off season for Auburn to improve that? Definitely want to hear your thoughts on that. All right, I'm out of here. Before I do, quick word, Rogue Shop sponsors all of these morning drops. Make sure you head over there, rogueshop.com, using code RAPPORT when you do that. It's America's #1 online dispensary. Before you get out of here, like the video, subscribe to the channel, tell somebody about us, man. Share the content with somebody. We'll be back at you with the midweek report tonight. But until then, and as always, War Eagle.